welcome back to another official Narrative Assassin update video with your host, yours truly, Hussein Hill. Great to be back with you guys once again. Hope you guys are doing well. I sure am. Today we're going to be doing a very long, or relatively long update video, because I want to discuss and analyze a contour of the recent Epstein file dumps that very few people are talking about right now. And it's a particularly novel and controversial take. And it's going to be a take that I think that is going to rub people the wrong way. A lot of folks are not going to like this take, or a lot of people are not going to like this analysis, rather, or this particular perspective on this. But I think, nevertheless, it needs to occur. We need to attack this particular conversation in general, and I think the Epstein files, specifically for the fact that it's such a massive national story and it has such heavy socio-political implications, and there's a lot of intrigue involved, and it's causing a lot of outrage. And I think some of the outrage is justified, but I think a lot of it is performative. A lot of it is performative or cynical or just plain ignorant based outrage. So before we go to that, though, I want to go through quickly the logistics for the channel and the brand. The upcoming article that I've been promising you guys, as again, I am going to release 3 articles. It was supposed to come out, the first one was supposed to come out last month. We're now into the new month right now, but I'm going to be releasing 3 articles. So last month's article is still in the pipeline. It should be published on Sunday at the end of the week, and it will be being promoted initially through a third party, but I will actually look to do a Substack of my own to put my work there as well. And then there's going to be 2 more articles scheduled after that. And we'll see what happens. I might take a break or I might continue. I want to keep it going, but there's a lot of things that I'm trying to make happen. A lot of things I'm trying to organizing off the ground. So we'll see how long it goes. But definitely 3 articles coming your way, so look up for that. And I will be promoting them on the channel. Also, too, I keep forgetting to do this in all my update videos, or at least most of them. Please go over to X, right? So the usual, follow me in the description below. Follow me on Rumble. Follow me on, if you're watching this on YouTube, or you're watching this on Rumble, follow me on YouTube. Follow me on X. Follow me on Telegram. Follow the Federalist Press, aka the TFP, on both X and Rumble. We're going to be dropping a video very very shortly, in the next few weeks, on the Rumble channel for the Federalist Press, and here on YouTube as a video for the Federalist Press brand. That's the fledgling journalistic current events outlet that I own. But also, when you're on X as well, follow me on X, but also make sure when you're on X to follow me every week, Wednesday 7:30 p.m. Eastern and Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, for a weekly X space / live stream. I do an audio video X space entitled NA Official Spaces. Please be there. It's a lot more relaxed than here on the channel. The types of subjects we can get into are a lot more taboo. I'm back on YouTube, so I'm going to try to obviously put most of my videos on YouTube. There will be exclusive Rumble videos for the more taboo, extremely controversial subjects. This might be pushing it. Who knows? I don't know. I don't care. But with regards to broader conversations, a lot of conversations that are not probably permitted on YouTube, we have those kind of conversations on the X Spaces, and it's just my way of having a weekly live stream sort of show with audio video. You jump into the Twitter space, you grab a mic. If you're civil and you're respectful, we have a conversation. There's back and forth. You have a good time. We try to keep it topical, try to keep it focused on a subject and a cohesive discussion. So be there for that. So that's going to be happening Wednesday of this week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and Friday of this week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. I'll admit to you, sometimes it's been the case because of my schedule. I start between the hours of 7:30 and 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday and Friday. So I try to shoot for 7:30, but life is life. And the schedule is the schedule with regard to IRL things that I do. So it is what it is. So, and of course, guys, if you like the channel, if you like the brand, please make sure to go into the description below and think about following me and donating to me and supporting me, either at Buy Me a Coffee / Hussein Hill, where you can become a consistent follower on that platform, Or for one-time donations, you can go over to Cash App directly and donate at NAHhill86. So that should be all the logistics and all the plugging out of the way. So now we're going to go into the conversation of or rather the subject matter and or conversation of this update video. So this update video is going to be revolving around specifically the Epstein scandal and the 3 million now, I guess there's 6 million new documents that have been released, but there's been 3 million that are privy to the public. And because I want to briefly address this element of it beforehand and then get into the part that I want to discuss. With regard to the very obvious implications that these articles have, the very obvious political implications with regards to like Israel, with regards to Zionism, with regards to elite Jews within politics and the upper echelons of society, that should be understood. Many people are talking about that, and I would say specifically, if you want the best dissection of that, I would contend, and I believe I'm right. I know I'm right actually. Go check out Nick Fuentes is on his Rebel channel. Nick Fuentes at his America First show, his episode on Monday, the replay of his stream on Monday for the initial sort of like dissection of that conversation. And he's going to be doing a super show on Friday where he's going to go into all the specifics of all the people that are particularly and confirmed to be within the Epstein network. So I'm going to leave that heavy lifting up to Nick. Because he's doing the research, he's got the team and all that. And quite frankly, everyone's talking about that angle of it, and I don't want to do it. So I'd rather just refer you to someone who is doing it and can do it better than anyone on the internet, myself included. So, but with all that said, it is sort of kind of obvious to everybody, in one way or another, whether you're like a left winger who's critical of Israel, or you're a far right dissident, the sort of like, the element of the conversation, they're reactionary far right, people like myself who are more, critical of Israel, critical of conventional conservatism, critical of the sort of neoliberal consensus in all of its iterations. It's kind of obvious to everyone that these documents clearly hold massive implications with regard to the conversation of Israeli infiltration in our government, as well as the relationship of political Jewry, high-powered Jews, and just Judaism as a collective, which, aka Jewry, as it pertains to its relationship with Gentile society in America. That's obvious, and I think everyone's kind of beating that dead horse to death. And it's a relevant conversation. I'm not underplaying that. As you guys have watched for those of you guys who watched me for a long time, back, the Rumble days as well, and the previous YouTube days before I got canceled, as well as those of you who have watched these, what I think is at this point to be 5 videos, this being the 5th one, that I've released on YouTube. I am not afraid, and I'm not skittish about approaching the conversation about Jewish power, Zionism, all these sorts of things. However, there's another element to what's happening with regard to the Epstein phenomenon, really, because this kind of transcends the dump, but the 3 million document dump sort of exacerbated this pre-existing phenomenon. And I kind of want to discuss the other phenomenon happening that's surrounding the Epstein conversation. I think that's equally important, because this conversation gets into the dynamics of the following: the dynamics between men and women, sexuality, sexuality in general, consent, and morality in the modern world. And it must be said before we dive into this conversation, because it's going to be a very controversial conversation, and I hope that people watch it are uncomfortable, because I want to be delicate and respectful to the subject matter, but I don't want people I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, essentially. But with all of that said, this is in no way, shape, or form, if it must be said, because everyone in 2026 likes to conflate people's opinion. I mean, this is just, usual sort of audience kind of consumer mentality. I do not, and this video is not meant to be a defense or a moralizing or a justification for Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Jeffrey Epstein was a sex criminal. That is obvious. He was also, what I think, if we're talking about sort of like the legislative judiciary, and political implications in that sort of realm. He was also, I would argue this is a more important aspect, he was also a traitor to America. He was also a double agent or a asset for foreign interests at the very least. He wasn't specifically confirmed to be a card-carrying member of Mossad or confirmed to be a card-carrying member of the Israeli government, but he absolutely was in contact with Israeli officials, and he was as these recent documents have confirmed, he was an avid Jewish chauvinist. So that's the case. So I would say he's a traitor to America. He's a tribal enemy of non-Jews, or he was a tribal enemy of non-Jews, and he was a sexual predator. But he wasn't a pedophile. And then we're going to start with that conversation. But he wasn't a pedophile. And people have been seeing people on social media say that, echo that sentiment. He wasn't a pedophile. And the first thing that the general population will say is, well, why are you saying that? Well, if you admit that he's a sex criminal, why do you have to clarify that he wasn't a pedophile? It's like, well, first and foremost, distinctions, delineations, and categories matter. So in order to understand someone like Jeffrey Epstein, in order to understand any villain of history, no matter how you feel about them, we have to be deliberate and specific with the particular terminologies that we use to describe them. The facts of the matter are, and or is, that Jeffrey Epstein did not engage with sexual congress with prepubescent children, which is the textbook scientific biological definition of pedophilia. All of the young girls and young women he engaged in sex with, or sexual congress with, or transactions with, were post-pubescent. This is meaningful. This is absolutely meaningful. And the reason why it's meaningful it's kind of strange that I have to explain this, but the post-pubescent and prepubescent, they are biological denotations or biological categories to delineate when a human being is biologically prepared for sexual congress, biologically prepared for reproduction. So the biological reason, and this biological reason, I would say, is informed by, for example, Christianity, objective morality within the Christian faith, in the Catholic faith. I'm a Catholic. But in, we'll say, functioning moral societies, the biological, this biological reality is, we'll say, informed by, or even, we'll say, interlinked with or inextricably linked to the metaphysical reality, which is the fact that a child who is physiologically incapable of sexual congress, who is not mature sexually, who does not have the proper biological and psychological utilities to engage in that behavior, to engage, someone of that particular, that particular stage in their development, to engage in sexual congress with that particular person is biologically sick, it is morally abhorrent, and it is a satanic perversion of the, if you want to take a Christian lens, the divine, the divine, what's the word? The divine design of human beings. Children are meant to mature properly, to come into a particular stage in their lives with regards to sexual maturation and then cognitive maturation, and then they become fully fledged adults. And to disrupt that process, again, if you want to take an evolutionary perspective, if you want to take a secular perspective, or you want to take a Christian perspective, it is horrifying. So that's why these sorts of categories matter. So it is the case that all the women that were involved with Jeffrey Epstein's sexual empire, his sexual fiefdom, his harem, if you will, were post-pubescent, which means they were sexually mature, which means biologically they could engage in consensual sexuality. Their body was equipped with the proper physiological developments and anatomical developments to engage properly with sexual congress. This is important. Now, the argument that, from that point, the argument can go off to maturation. And so I want to leave it there, but I want to pivot to the outrage, because the outrage and the analysis of this conversation have to be compared simultaneously, have to be compared in tandem. So a lot of people, again, have freaked out at people like myself like I am doing right now in this video, and many others have as well. Lucas Gage has said this. Most notably, Nicholas J. Fuentes has said this. They have been freaking out about people making these delineations. And so much so that they have also been freaking out at the satirization of Jeffrey Epstein. The satirization of Jeffrey Epstein. And another aspect, too, about what's happening in this conversation is a deliberate, overarching attack on masculinity. Yes, I'm saying that right now. A deliberate and overarching attack on male sexuality, in particular, the proper roles of men and women, also, as well as an overarching attack on masculinity. So, let's start with the outrage, because we're going to jump right back into the categorical conversation. Everyone has seen on social media that Nick Fuentes, in particular, and I say in particular for a reason, I will get that in a minute, has released a line of quarter zip jackets that are designed in the same fashion as the Jeffrey Epstein iconic quarter zip jacket, the custom Jeffrey Epstein quarter zip jacket, of which he puts his initials on the jacket. So everyone's seen that meme. It's basically it's a real life meme. He is selling these jackets as a meme. Everyone understands the joke. Everyone, I know for a fact, understands the joke. But there have been certain people in the ether who have tried to take this conversation and impugn it, basically meld, a somewhat, we'll say, reasonable critique with a completely ridiculous critique. And the reasonable critique is like, hey, listen, this might be a joke, but it's completely distasteful. And they're melding that with like, you literally support pedophiles. You're making off-color, tongue-in-cheek jokes about Jeffrey Epstein on your show while wearing the quarter zip hoodie. By the way, which has the USA logo on. He could, sort of a wink and a nod by Nick to show you like, I'm putting on the fucking USA acronym on the actual jacket, not the Jeffrey Epstein, to kind of sort of insinuate that I'm co-opting this. And there's like a kind of post-ironic, satirical, provocative thing going on here. So try to meld these two ideas together. Bad taste joke. What are you doing? There's certain things that are sacred, as well as you like pedophiles. So of course the obvious one that no one believes. No one believes that Nick Fuentes is a pedophile. No one believes that for a second. Let's attack the measured critique, which is like, this is distasteful. Well, why is it distasteful? Who is it pissing off specifically? The people that are pissed off by this, interestingly enough, on the elite level, are all the same fucking people that have been covering up the Epstein files for decades. Institutional Republicans, institutional Democrats. So on a political level, that's who's upset at these quarter zips being sold en masse. So for starters, all the sort of dissident right people, because there's a lot of people in the ether who posture as being like MAGA anti-establishment truth-sayers, or far-right neo-Nazi truth-sayers, or even for the left, the far-left insurgent revolutionary vanguards who are fighting the imperial order or the Trump and Reich. For all the revolutionaries out there, for all you truth-sayers, first and foremost, you are parroting the same sentiments of the people that have covered up this sex trafficking ring, this egregious example of espionage, blackmail, and international intrigue for decades. For 25 years, roughly. 25 plus years. Plus years. And the reason why they're upset is because, as they should be upset, Nick Fuentes and many young men that are buying these, many young people that are buying these quarter zips, people that are consuming this, they're laughing at them. And here's another interesting part before I go on to another aspect of this same critique with regards to some of the people I just mentioned, the more countercultural voices in the mix, but we'll get to that in a minute. If you go on, because I just deliberately to see this point, if you go on Google right now and you Google Jeffrey Epstein quarter zip jackets, websites like Etsy, I believe Amazon, big name, fashion forward websites, or just, we'll say large sort of online, fashion forward / trendy / online outlet websites. Websites that get a lot of traffic for selling knick-knack products or novel products are selling this stuff at mass. So much that people are talking on Reddit about buying the Epstein jacket. These are not necessarily groypers. These are not like weird people in general. Not to say the groypers aren't, because the groypers are being ironic, but let's just take the characterization that people want to make about people who are laughing at this meme. These are not like freaks in their basement who are dreaming up pedophilia. These are like young guys mostly, and just young people in general who are consuming this stuff because it's provocative. It's like this is it's synonymous. It is equivalent to the meme that was popular a few years ago. Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself. And ironically about this kind of new generation of outrage against Epstein, this particular performative outrage against Jeffrey Epstein in particular, or specifically, is that it echoes the same critique from specifically the establishment left, the Democrats, when they saw trending on social media Jeffrey Epstein kill himself, which they said, oh, these conspiracy theorists, they're simultaneously pushing conspiracy theories about the suicide of Jeffrey Epstein, and they're also dog whistling to supporting him, that he was a victim or something. That was their condemnation of the truth sayers back then, those that were trying to push through the conversation back then. Now, in 2026, people are doing the same thing, essentially, laughing at the absurdity of the system, laughing at the absurdity of this bizarre, sick society that wants to simultaneously finger wag people, young men in particular, but people in general, for scoffing at it, for saying, racist jokes, sexist jokes, jokes about sexual impropriety, rape jokes, whatever, or grape. I don't know the rules on YouTube. I don't know. Saying, grape jokes, I guess. Saying sexually impropriety, jokes about sexual impropriety. I hope this doesn't get me flagged. I don't know. But people that are saying these jokes, they want to scoff at these people while being complicit with generational cover-up of international intrigue, international usury and exploitation of young women for the means of blackmailing elites to do the bidding of high-level political espionage. So that's just the first part. That's for starters. Let's go to the plebs, because these are all just plebs. These sort of like far-right types that are doing this, the MAGA types that are doing this, and everyone in the ether who's not in control. All the sort of plebs on social media, all the plebs on ether, in the ether. I can't believe that people are laughing about the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. I can't believe that the quarter zip is becoming a meme. It's like, bro, how many of you have made, for MAGA specifically, how many of you have made fun of Antifa trannies? How many of you have made jokes about trannies committing suicide en masse? Which is a real thing. Transsexuals, transgenders. I'm trying to get used to YouTube here. How many of you have, well, I'll say this. If this video gets taken off of YouTube, I will just reload, I'll just share the Rumble. But how many of the people in MAGA have made fun of transsexuals committing suicide? How many of the people on YouTube, or I'm sorry, in MAGA have made memes about, for example, 2016, right? Commies get free helicopter rides, which was based on the historical precedent of Pinochet, South American dictator, who routinely took communists and dropped them out of helicopters. Now you can say, well, that's different because commies are bad. I would agree. Transsexuals are degenerate, yeah, but you shouldn't wish suicide on. But either way, you can make the argument that you are counter-signaling against evil. However, again, in the modern world, is the case that transsexuals have a high rate of suicidality. That's not necessarily funny. And you can also make the case that people back in 2016, specifically in the MAGA sphere, the kind of burgeoning, which is now the codified MAGA sphere, were saying these things to Antifa, basically implying that they would want to see Antifa grabbed off the street and dropped off of helicopters. That we get mass Antifa, mass communist murders, mass communist slaughters. So that's the MAGA thing. And in the general, like MAGA, MAGA has made countless jokes about whenever a Democrat operative gets hurt, they laugh at it on social media. But like then we can move to the far right neo-Nazi sort of white nationalist sphere of the conversation. These guys who post Hitler 24/7. And specifically, if I want to keep this video on YouTube, I'm not going to go specifically into all the details about my views on Hitler or World War II. For that, I did release a video. It was on YouTube. It's now only on Rumble. So I did release a video discussing Hitler in depth on YouTube before. I was canceled initially, but that's gone now. Now it's only on Rumble. But for more of those kind of conversations, make sure to follow me on Rumble, and also make sure to join me on the Wednesday and Friday 7:30 p.m. Eastern X Spaces, NA official X Spaces, because I will go unfiltered about that. But needless to say, however people feel about Hitler, and I will say this for the record, I do not buy into the hysteria of 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 trying to paint Hitler as the ultimate evil. The ultimate evil is the devil. With that said, it is just an obvious case that Hitler was a warlord. Hitler was a warlord. Hitler was an expansionist. Hitler, under the Third Reich, people, Jews in particular, suffered, and many others, suffered, we'll say, tyranny and cruelty, and yes, killing, liquidizing, right? For ethnic reasons or for socio-political reasons, in so much as they opposed the Third Reich. This happened to Catholics, this happened to Jews, this happened to many people. And a lot of the far right guys on social media, they'll try to either do two sort of like sleight of hands. They'll say that no one ever died under Hitler. Hitler was the most wholesome Chungus guy in the world. He was just this great person. He was a saint. He wasn't a warlord. He wasn't a biological determinist who actually fused the Lutheran Church with paganism. He didn't believe in this sort of like this imperial sort of world order of which the Third Reich would be this sort of beacon of human perfection in the form of German supremacy, German purity, German political hegemony, and reign over the broader nations, with nations being subordinated to the Third Reich. That never happened. He was just a total wholesome Chungus guy that never did anything wrong. And that's one narrative. But then the others will be like, no, he did do stuff wrong. He did do some pretty brutal things, and it's based because it was against Jews or whatever. It was against the Jews and the the undesirables. It's okay. Well, that's not moral. So you make jokes about killing people, or you make light of a particular figure in history who killed people for expansionist tribal reasons. You do that. That's not exactly moral. Now, again, I don't want to go into, for reasons that I'm on YouTube, and also it's not necessarily the point of this conversation in this video, but I do think there's a lively conversation to be had about certain accounts of World War II, how true certain numbers are. I'm open to that conversation. We're not going to go into that conversation right now, but I'm open to that conversation. I think there's a lot of merit to that conversation. Now, I am not particularly repulsed by those conversations whatsoever, but I do know that Adolf Hitler was not perfect. I would say he was deeply flawed. There's a lot of things that have been embellished for various political reasons, but he was deeply flawed. Either way. So people can make jokes about that. But then when someone decides to, specifically in the case of Nick Fuentes, when a devout Catholic who is celibate and or abstinent, virgin, devout Catholic, cradle Catholic, who promotes anti-drug use, anti-promiscuity, anti-hedonism, anti-degeneracy on his platform and lives it in his life, when that guy makes a joke about ostensibly a high-powered sexual, creepy, predacious playboy who groomed girls for political intrigue, when he does that, while simultaneously, which Nick Fuentes has done, condemning the actual immorality of the situation, all of a sudden it's the joke is off the table. And this is a performative, nonsensical disposition to have. And it does stem a lot from, we'll get back to the conversation of the categorical differences of pedophilia and non-pedophilia and consent and sexuality. This gets into a conversation of an assault against masculinity, because this can be, you saw this with previous subcultures in the 1970s with like punk rock and roll in general. You saw many rebels, bikers, 70s bikers, many early punk rockers, a lot of dissidents, a lot of cultural dissidents. Lemmy Kilmister comes to mind, Sid Vicious, Darby Crash of the Germs, many dissident, heterodox, provocative figures have wielded imagery like the swastika and many other things to provoke people. It's almost similar. It's actually extremely similar to when people engage in the sort of like the the satanic allusions, or I'm tired. The satanic what's the word I'm looking for? Not illusions. What am I looking for? It doesn't matter. The satanic imagery, that's the word I'm looking for, that was very popular among certain metal subcultures in the 1980s. And you have the whole satanic panic. It was done to provoke the masses. It was done to provoke the straights, to provoke the conventional. Very few of those people were actual Satanists. Okay. And with regards to those that were flying the swastikas in previous generations in the we'll say mid to late 90s, early 80s, 70s, etc., all of them were basically liberal, if not anarchist, or if not nihilist. They didn't have none of them even had an ideology. They just wanted to get a rise out of the norms, the normies. They want to get a rise out of the normative population, and it was funny. So it's like, and this particular impulse is inherently masculine. That's why the majority, if you think about a figure in pop culture history who's done these things the most, it's usually people who are men. Again, Lemmy Kilmister, right? More recently, Kanye West, aka Sid Vicious, his iconic swastika T-shirt. The Sex Pistols did it with their iconic shirt where it's got a swastika, and then transposed on top of it is an upside down cross with Jesus on the cross. Now that's offensive to everybody. That's offensive to Jews. That's offensive to liberals. That's offensive to Christians. But they didn't care. They didn't care because they were provocative artists, right? This is also a conversation of the attack on male mischief, the attack on the provocation by the man to go into particularly the arts and media and the creative space and say, fuck you, this sacred cow of yours, I'm going to burn it. I'm going to burn it and gut it and display it on a tarp for you and fucking laugh in your face. Like, that is a male impulse. And that is the same male impulse that has fought wars. That's the same male impulse that has created empires, that has conquered new lands to expand empires. That is the same male impulse that creates civilization, that pushes through, that conquers, that goes to war. What is war? War is combative. So in order to be a proper warrior, you must have a combative spirit. That is a combative spirit, a combative disposition, which is inherent to the male disposition. So this is obviously like 100% a tone policing, a pearl clutching attempt to cudgel, number one, humor, number two, polemics, and number three, the inherent masculine and the inherent masculine proclivity to go out to the ether and provoke, which is important. That's how you get conversations that are interesting. And if you look at the people who are most incensed by this, it's older people, many of which are either, they are sort of, we'll say, white guys, they're in conventional domesticated like marriages where they have to simp for their wives, they have to simp for this appeasement for women, or they're older people that have like their burnouts, post-wall women, burnout guys that fucked around their entire lives, did drugs, slept around, and now they're sort of losers. And the majority of people that are kind of pushing these sort of like provocative conversations forward with Epstein and the quarter zip and all this, they're younger guys. Mainly younger guys who are Catholic, mainly younger guys who are going out and promoting anti-degeneracy and anti-hedonism. And there's another level to which, and I want to get too stuck in this part because I want to get to the broader conversation, the broad conversation of how this affects sexuality and gender dynamics and all this. But there's another conversation. This is generational. This is generational. This is a issue where you see a lot of older people who have failed, who have added to hedonism, and we kind of will revisit this point later on in this update video, but they've added to the hedonistic degradation of civilization, and now they're seeing an entirely new generation of young men who are doing better than they are, who are ascending and transcending these issues. And those same new generation men are laughing at them. Like, yeah, we think this is funny because we're not degenerates. I remember specifically seeing this, and this is the last point I'll say on this particular part of the update video. This was the issue with people like, I forget her name. Her name escapes me. She was part of, I forget her name. For those of you in the replies, please respond. The Australian co-host of one of Elijah Shaver's previous shows. And she had a massive issue specifically with Kai Schwemmer, and she would kind of combat Kai Schwemmer, and she would combat John Doyle, and she would combat Nick Fuentes. And her kind of ongoing critique with these young men was that they're young, and and you guys are kind of fascist, and you're chauvinistic. And these young men were saying, that we've learned from the mistakes of people like you. You're dried up, you're sort of like you're a millennial, your generation fucked up, and we're not going to listen to you anymore, and we're going to laugh at a lot of things that you don't think are funny. And this was mostly it was most nobly encapsulated with Nick Fuentes. Her interview with Nick Fuentes was legendary. I forget her name, something Sweeney or something. I forget her name. Doesn't really matter. Former Australian female co-host of Elijah Schaefer's one of his shows. We're here, or something like that. And yeah, for example, her particular interview with Nick Fuentes was just that. It was just this older, single, post-wall woman doing a struggle session with a young guy who just didn't care. Virgin, devout Catholic, successful, politically savvy. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to laugh. We're going to laugh. We're going to make fun of women. We're going to troll you. We do not care. We do not care. You don't have moral power over us because your generation has fucked up. So on to the next conversation about the kind of revisiting the conversation of the necessity of categories with regards to, the conversation of puberty and post-pubescent and prepubescent. These are meaningful distinctions as for the same reason that I brought at the top of the video. It matters. So again, we understand that predation is evil. We understand that the grooming of people is evil. However, the behavior that Jeffrey Epstein engaged in is ubiquitous in 2026. OnlyFans, the modern dating scene, the modern standard of most women who engage in hypergamy. People using vulnerable people for sexual congress and for their own means is just a mainstay in society. So this is a standard now. This is not to excuse it. This is not to make it correct, but it's like this is a standard. This is a particular standard. Furthermore, with regards to the conversation of Epstein, and this has been confirmed by the documents therein, many of the women, if not virtually all of the women, have been confirmed to have been complicit with the sexual congress. And it was something akin to them sort of swooning over a wealthy playboy who could buy them expensive things and fly them out. They were sometimes creeped out, they were sometimes unnerved, but by and large they were complicit. And you know what two other situations, one in particular, but two generally speaking other situations this mirrors? Harvey Weinstein and the cancellation or the attempted cancellation of Russell Brand. We'll start with Harvey Weinstein for the obvious parallels. High-powered Jew. Now again, the conversation with Harvey Weinstein, as it should be with Epstein with regards to the sociopolitical implications of this, should be there are high-powered Jews, and Harvey Weinstein was more clannish, and he was more there was more confirmation that he was allied with and supported the state of Israel than there ever was for Epstein. But nevertheless, Epstein and Harvey Weinstein were both equally clannish Jews in high positions of power, and they used those positions of power to exploit non-Jewish people for their own gain. But that aside, we can look at the conversation just at pure gender dynamics, right? Harvey Weinstein was a mainstay in Hollywood, met with the Obamas, every beloved celebrity knew him. His name was on the credits of every movie. He was the guy. Then all of a sudden, a tidal wave of accusations came out about Harvey Weinstein. A tidal wave. And the tidal wave seems to have confirmed, similarly, to a lesser level, because Harvey Weinstein, as far as we know at least, wasn't engaged in international blackmail or espionage. This was just sort of like he was using Hollywood as sort of his playground, his sexual playground. So he was a sexual creep. He was predatorial, and he was absolutely using younger, impressionable women and girls for sexual favors in order to advance their careers. However, those women were also complicit. Many of the women that engaged with Harvey Weinstein, they took the deals. They all came out later on. Oh, I felt pressured. I was pressured. He got me liquored up. Yada yada. Did you quit Hollywood? Did any of these women quit Hollywood, or did they wait till years after the fact to come out during the Me Too movement and claim and talk about, oh, it was so hard for me. These women were fucking complicit. Same thing with Russell Brand. They tried to attack him. Now, Russell Brand's defamation was much more outwardly political. He was another beloved, younger kind of rock and roll esoteric figure in Hollywood up until he started talking about COVID-19 shutdowns, up until he started to question the status quo about COVID-19. Then all of his sexual improprieties came flooding to the surface. And what we found out about him, which he has admitted, he was a womanizer. Obviously, I mean, if you watched his stand-up routine in the back in the day, and you sort of saw the way he looked in public, you can surmise very quickly this guy was a drug-using degenerate weirdo, which he admitted. But the girl that came out, I think the girl that came out strongest against him, I think she said she was either between the ages of 16, it was between 16 and 17, if not 15, something like that. It came out that it was consensual. The only thing that she surmised or that she contended was that it was uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable. He was weird, but you were involved, and you were involved for a long time. The broader conversation about this particular aspect of this phenomenon is that there is a willful dismissal or complete a complete overlooking of the inherent agency and complicitness that these women have in these situations. And this goes into the conversation of consent and age and sexuality, right? So let's start with consent. Can anyone tell me the forefront organization that fought for raising the age of consent? I can tell you, they're still around today. They are called the Woman Christian Temperance Union. They were an organization that had their foundation in the 1800s. And when you first start looking into them, they sound pretty innocuous. Oh, they wanted to fight for a moral, Christ-centric vision for the family, and they wanted to protect women from exploitation. Okay. Well, you start getting a little deeper into what they mean by those things. For example, they had a moral Christian opposition to prostitution. They described prostitution as male slavery, male domination of women. That it was men who were to blame for the prostitution, not the women that engaged, not the women that were complicit, not the prostitutes themselves. They were just unfortunate. They were unfortunate, unaccountable actors in this predation of prostitution. Now, you can argue that prostitution in the earlier days, in the 1800s specifically, was much more brutal than it is now. I'll grant you that. But the relationship between the prostitute and the pimp has really never changed. There were career prostitutions in the 1800s, before that, and they still exist today. Okay? Sorry about that. Studio technical difficulties, if you guys only knew. If you only knew the struggles I go through to give you guys fucking content and videos. Anyway, as we were saying, they believed that the conversation of prostitution was a consequence of male tyranny, and they weren't alone. They were not alone. The WCTU allied with many feminists, actually, to push for things like the age of consent. And moreover, they were also involved in propping up ideological campaigns like women's suffrage, right for women to vote, right for women to work, right for women to be financially independent. Now, why is this significant? Because, and you see a similar issue, actually. You see this sort of resonating, because this organization still exists today. I just checked it out. I looked it up. They still exist. They very much still exist today. And this explains sort of the phenomenon, for example, in pro-life circles, in the mainstream pro-life movement. Who runs the mainstream pro-life movement, like in the immediate sense? It's women. It's all women. And what you start to find out is that, in particular, and this is sort of kind of where the critiques that I mentioned earlier at the top of this video sort of kind of, they start to make more sense. You start to realize that a lot of these movements that will posture as being moral or Christian or conservative or right wing, they're just feminist. They're just another flavor of feminist. And going back to the conversation about how these people viewed their particular agenda, they were not concerned about preserving the traditional family. They wanted women to be autonomous, politically emancipated actors in the world. And the reason why they would use political red herrings like prostitution, because everyone hates prostitution, but it wasn't about prostitution. It was about emancipating women away from their fathers. It was about emancipating women away from their would-be husbands, because during this time it was common practice for men to oversee the courting, for the fathers to oversee the courting process with the woman. So you sort of understand slowly that these conversations of consent and the proper age, these consent laws and sexual autonomy, they have zero to do with morality and everything to do with political narratives and everything to do with the reconstruction or the disruption of the proper gender roles. It's the same conversation with the so-called LGBTQ people in the ether, particularly on like the MAGA, more palatable right wing. They want to make a conversation. They want to have a conversation about transsexuality or transgenderism and isn't it horrendous and isn't it horrible? It's like, well, transgenderism proceeds from homosexuality. Homosexuality proceeds from feminism. Why is that? Because if men and women are interchangeable, if a woman can do everything that a man can do, and she can acquire the same resources and play in the same arenas and operate in the same spheres, then who's to say that a man and a woman can't have same-sex partners? Who's to say that they can't fill those roles not just only in the workforce and in the public sector, but in the private sector, in the domestic sense, in the arena of domestication and family. These things are all correlated. So again, the glaring reality that this stuff opens up for us is that no one here is concerned about. Everyone's kind of freaking out about Epstein and sort of this. It's the same type of performative outrage about Harvey Weinstein. The same people that are freaking out about Epstein are the same people that were freaking out about Weinstein and freaking out about Russell Brand. Now, there are some people who are politically minded and some people who are earnest who are trying to look at Weinstein and see how it pertains specifically to Jewish political control or oligarchical political control. And one, again, can surmise, it must be reiterated, that the grooming and the predation of the vulnerable in general is terrible. But the people that are going out there and saying it's bad, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, it's bad because women. It's bad because it hurt women. It's like, no, it's not bad because it hurt women. No, it's bad because you should not be preying on the vulnerable in general. Number one, and number two, this particular practice was utilized for geopolitical and sociopolitical nefarious reasons. That's why. And also the same people that are pearl clutching at the idea. Oh, how dare you have a conversation about consent? How dare you say that the women in these situations were? Are you complicit with Hollywood? Do you think that we should ban contraceptions? Do you think that we should ban contraceptions? Because a lot of people want to ban abortion or at least mitigate the extent to which one can engage or one can carry out an abortion. How many of you are against, or for rather, the complete criminalization of contraception, the complete societal prohibition of casual sex? None of you are. The majority of you aren't. And you see the types of people that are engaged in this performative outrage about people who question, who dare to question the conversation of consent, who dare say, hey guys, listen, stop trying to make this a human interest story about poor little girls and let's be adults here. Let's be adults. Obviously, Epstein was older, so he has more culpability as an older, you might say, a very perverse, very skewed iteration of the patriarchal kind of figure in this arrangement, but the women have capability as well too. And this gets to the broader conversation, which is, oh, and also too, it must be said as well, because there's a very similar thing happening recently. There's some similar drama happening in the broader sphere of the right wing with Elijah Schaffer and Sarah Stock. I'm not going to go into all the details. I won't do it. Ironically, she has a lot of parallels to Epstein, right? A lot of people are saying a lot of things, just like, the dumps, the 3 million dumps that have been revealed, a lot of misinformation. And I said before, go check out the Monday replay stream of Nick Fuentes. He dissects and debunks all the relevant misinformation and tackles this stuff. So a lot of misinformation, but the broader conversation is sexual impropriety. And everyone on social media with Elijah Schaffer and Sarah Stock is trying to point the finger, and there's a broad sort of, moralizing, oh my God, Elijah Schaffer, how could you? Oh my God, Sarah Stock, how could you? And for me, it's very simple. It's like, well, this is what happens when you put men and women in the same workplace. This is what happens when you try to think that you can be traditional and modern at the same time. That you can have a society that somehow oscillates between open modernity, open, accessible, modern standards while trying to maintain this performative traditionalism. It doesn't work because traditionalism, properly understood, is a philosophical presupposition derived from the natural law. It's derived from how the world ought to work. Christians and Catholics, myself included, we relate this to the Word of God. We make equivalent, or we equate the natural law rather to God's moral law, to God's divine design of the universe and of human beings and of the world. So again, there's no way you're going to have a society that has people engaging in traditional self-regulated behaviors, at least en masse or by and large, when you're trying to have co-ed workspaces, when you're trying to have female influencers, when you're trying to have men and women compete in the same industries, in the same fields, vie for attention. Obviously, specifically when it comes to media, what is social media about? Getting eyes, attracting attention, in some cases being provocative, stirring things up. It's a popularity contest. It's a popularity contest, and it's also a practice of getting as much attention from the general public as possible. Well, how do women get attention specifically? Through their sexual wiles. How have women navigated complex and in some cases tyrannical structures throughout history? They've used their sexual wiles. And so, when someone like myself talks about this kind of stuff, the first thing people want to say is like, oh, so what's your prescription? Is your prescription that we should all engage in 14-year-old child brides? No, not at all. I think that, and this has everything to do with the declining maturation rates that specifically took a very sharp decline, a very notable decline after the 1950s, more or less. The declining maturation rates, which have to do with, I think, that this is the modernization of society, advancements in technology, and a complete disruption and degradation of the two-parent family households, as well as just a complete degradation of parenting in general. People they're infantilized longer. People are becoming more immature. They're prolonging their childhoods longer. So I don't think that an en masse sort of prescription of older men engaging with teenage marriage or teenage marriage in general en masse is necessarily the best thing right now. I don't think our civilization can handle that. To be clear, I don't think the maturation rates can handle that. What I am saying is this is the direction that we have to move in. We have to start deconstructing a few things. We have to start deconstructing, first and foremost, as I mentioned earlier in this update video, this constant finger wagging, this constant concern showing by the masses, male humor and male behavior. Men are rambunctious. We are combative. We are mischievous. We are provocative. That's what we are. Stop trying to beat that out of us. Sans criminal behavior, if people are engaging in provocative polemic discussions, and they're engaging in male behavior, let them do that. That is a part of our nature. Number two, we need to stop pretending that as long as everyone hits the age of 25 and 35 and it's consensual, it's normal. No, that's not normal, actually. That's one of the reasons why our fertility rates are fucked up, quite frankly. Our fertility rates are disoriented. Because if you look at the actual literature on this, if you look at the actual statistics on this, the fertility, the prime fertility of a woman is between late teens and late 20s. That's the prime real estate, if you will, sexual real estate for a woman. Men have a longer shelf life. Men and women sexually and physiologically mature and develop and age differently. We are not the same. We have to stop pretending as though we're the same, and we have to stop pretending that this sort of idea of we're going to emancipate all the men and women together, women podcasters, women political influencers, women bosses, literally women domineering over men. Like to reference the organization I mentioned before, the Women Christian Temperance Union. First and foremost, they were engaging in a heresy for the fact that they were a female organization trying to drive progress forth for Christianity. No woman shall hold dominion over men. Sorry, women don't get to run the church. Women don't get to push forward the conversation about Christ. Men do that. Priests do that. Clerics do that. We have to stop trying to disorient the sexual hierarchy, which is what we've been doing for decades. That's how we get shit like, quite frankly, that's how you get things like Jeffrey Epstein. Sorry, young girls, they're in the world. These are autonomy. How these young girls come to be? Did the people go speak to their fathers? Of course not. These women, on their own volition, as modern, young, independent women, open themselves up to sexual predation. Now imagine if the father held dominion over these women. The minute the guy came to them to invite them to whatever, first of all, it probably wouldn't have happened because the father had such a tight rope, a short leash on them, so to speak. I'm not trying to be, that was an illusion, that's not a pun, but they would have such a figurative short leash on them. They would have such a watchful eye on their behavior that wouldn't happen. But like at the off chance some guy did, the father in question would threaten, if not proceed to utterly physically beat or do major physical damage to said potential groomer. If the men were involved in these women's lives, which it's a fact, these women were from broken homes, single fatherhoods, etc. If men were involved in women's lives, or even if we had a competent patriarchal society that said, okay, you came from a terrible, horrible society or family, we'll put you in a Christian home, like a proper Christian home, a Catholic home, a Catholic parish, orphanage, some sort of situation. Or, we had a society that incentivized that men have to not step up necessarily, but men will take control. Some man somewhere will take control of these women's lives. That women cannot be allowed to operate autonomously in the world. They just can't. They can't. They are vulnerable. They are the lesser sex. You can't simultaneously say you want to protect the lesser sex and then expect the lesser sex to operate equally to the stronger sex, the leading sex, and expect all the outcomes to come out perfectly equal with no disruption, perversion, or predation. It makes literally no sense. We have to stop playing this game. We have to stop confusing this gender hierarchy because it makes us feel bad. And many millennials and Gen Xers, I'm going to speak to you guys specifically because I'm a millennial. I'm 39 and I'm unmarried. That's not good. We need to realize that our generation's fucked up. This idea of being older, waiting till you're 35, waiting till you're 45. I know many millennials and Gen Xers who have done this. That is not normal. And when the young men come along, particularly on the revanchist right wing, the provocative revanchist right wing, and say, no, this is gross. What you are doing it is actually a biological perversion and abnormality in the entire historicity of the human species. You are actually an anomaly. You are anomalous in the actual canon of human development. We need to stop and listen to them because they are correct. We are anomalous. We did fuck up. We are the generations that created this mistake. And we have to move forward. And the only way to move forward is to reverse course in many ways. We have to reverse course on the egalitarianism. We have to reverse course on this sort of social, political, and rhetorical emancipation of women. That's where it begins. That's the prescription. There needs to be an intergenerational raising of the consciousness or conversation to get women to recede from public life and be back in their proper role as housewives, as mothers, as daughters, under the tutelage, under the supervision of their patriarchal figures, whether it be their husbands or their fathers, or even their brothers for that matter. And we need intergenerationally to advocate for young people to get married younger. But of course, that's going to be an issue when we live in this falling hyper-capitalist society. Because, for example, again, with all these feminists who want to fight for the right to work, do you think any of them were concerned that there would be that women entering the workplace would completely disrupt the the forward positive trajectory of male success in these industries? Because it has, and they don't care, and they do not care. All these industries have been turned upside down, have been flipped on their head to accommodate women, and at the detriment of men. Same thing with schooling. Young boys are going into universities, going into early age curriculum, and being taught these sorts of curriculum to feminize them, to make them more docile, to more tolerant and accepting. These are feminine traits. These are not masculine traits. Women women exceed in the arena of rhetorical sophistry. Women exceed in the rhetorical sophistry, we'll say emotive rhetorical sophistry. They exceed in the arena of emotional manipulation and egalitarian dialectics. Men don't. We're more logical, we're more linear, and we're actually harsher in many ways with our perspectives. So to land this update video on a close, the performative cries or the performative outrage of things like Jeffrey Epstein, I don't care. I'm tuning it out. I think the memes about Jeffrey Epstein are hilarious. And while I'm glad that Jeffrey Epstein is no longer with us, in the sense that he is, he was obviously a blight on civilized society. I'm not going to pretend that what he engaged in is anything other than a product of the modern world. You want less Jeffrey Epsteins, you want less Harvey Weinsteins, women must recede from public life. People must be getting married earlier. The conversation of criminalization of contraception must occur. And old post-wall women who are on YouTube and Twitter who feel, because I know when you hear this, you're the first, you're a pedophile, you're a creep, you're fucking gross, you're homeless, you're whatever ad hom you want to make. I'm speaking the biological. You can say whatever you want about me. I am a fucking weird punk rock eccentric freak. I am. It's true. I'm a freak. But I'm right. And everything I'm just saying is biologically and historically accurate. And you can sit there and you can seethe and cope, older women, 35, 45 plus year old women, 26, 7 year old women who are on their way up, against the wall. Yeah, post the wall, right? About to break through that wall, about to be the cartons looking a little empty. All you women who are aging out, I don't care. It's not about you. It's about restoring civilization. It's about restoring civilization to some normality and some ordered functionality, man. We need to be ordered. We need to be functional. So, with that said, guys, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys later.